Where is the money, Chidi? The money the whole family sent you to bring back.
Uncle, please, let me explain.
You collected school fees, land money, contribution from every household, and you return empty-handed. You're an utter disgrace. You have finished this family.
4 years earlier, nobody in that compound could have imagined this moment. Back then, Chidi was the family's brightest hope. Not because he was the smartest, not because he was the loudest, but because he carried something the others didn't. Patience. The kind that studies a problem before touching it. The kind that counts every coin twice. The kind that listens when everybody else is shouting. Their compound sat at the bottom of a sloping street, a narrow building with a leaning fence and a rusted gate that screamed when someone pushed it. During the rainy season, the yard turned to mud. During the dry season, the well ran so low they measured water in cups. Life was not gentle, but it was theirs. Every morning before light, Chidi's mother left to trade in the market. Every night, she returned smelling of pepper and dust. His father repaired generators under a mango tree, his hands permanently stained with oil. His 2 younger sisters shared 1 pair of school shoes between them, taking turns by the day. Everybody had dreams, but dreams needed money, and money was the one thing that never stayed long in that house. For years, the family survived by borrowing from tomorrow to pay for today. Whenever one debt closed, another opened its mouth. School fees, generator parts, medicine, rent, always something, always another hole. Then one evening, news arrived, an opportunity. A cousin abroad had found Chidi a place, a job, a chance to send real money home. The entire compound lit up like a festival. Neighbors came to shake hands. Aunties who never visited suddenly appeared. People talked as if the wealth had already landed, as if all Chidi had to do was step off the plane and gather the money waiting on the ground. Only his grandmother stayed quiet, watching him from her stool in the corner, saying nothing, because unlike the others, she was studying his face the way she studied the sky before rain. Raising the travel money was not easy. Every household contributed. Uncles brought what they had. His father sold 2 generators and his best tools. His mother emptied the savings hidden in her wrapper. Even the neighbors added something, expecting to be remembered later. On the night before the money was gathered, his grandmother called Chidi to her side. She pressed a small 1 coin in his palm, an old coin with a hole through the middle. "Keep this," she said. "When you cannot tell a true friend from a false one, remember it has 2 sides but only 1 edge." Chidi smiled, not understanding, and slipped it into his pocket. That coin would one day save his life, though he did not know it yet. The day the money was handed over, nobody threw a party. The envelope was thick, wrapped in cloth, tied with thread. Nobody smiled. The weight of everybody's hope felt too heavy to celebrate. That evening, his grandmother sat outside. The sky slowly turned grey. Bats crossed overhead on their way to the trees. After a long silence, she simply stared into the dark, thinking, remembering, weighing something nobody else could feel. When Chidi sat beside her, neither of them spoke for a while. The quiet between them felt like a warning. Finally, the old woman exhaled a slow, tired breath. Then she took his hand. "You know what you are carrying, don't you?" Chidi nodded slowly. Her eyes caught the last light. "It is not money," she said quietly. "It is trust, and trust is the only thing that cannot be bought back once it is broken." The words settled over him, heavy, sharp, because both of them understood the truth. Failure was not an option. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then she placed her thin hand on his cheek, a hand that buried a husband and raised a village. "Not everyone who smiles at your journey wants you to arrive." Chidi frowned. "What do you mean, Mama?" She only patted his hand. "You will understand. Just remember the coin." And at that moment, he thought it was only an old woman's talk. What he didn't know was that 4 years later, those same words would be the reason he survived. Because sometimes the people who hand you the money are not the ones who want you to succeed. And thousands of miles away, a trap was already waiting, dressed as family. The night before Chidi left, sleep avoided the compound because everybody was awake, counting an imaginary future. His mother moved through the house, wiping surfaces that were already clean, folding clothes that were already folded, anything to keep her hands from shaking. Her sisters whispered in their corner, planning the shoes, the books, the small luxuries they believed were coming. Because in families like theirs, one person's journey never belonged to one person. Everybody traveled inside that suitcase. Everybody quietly spent money that had not been earned. As the night deepened, the visitors left. The compound grew still. The kind of stillness that only comes before something changes. That was when Chidi slipped out. Not for air, but because there was one person he still needed to see. Ada, the girl who had lived in his heart since childhood. The girl whose name people spoke in the same breath as his own. In the neighborhood, nobody said Chidi without soon saying Ada. Ada's father's small chemist shop stood at the corner. The bench outside was empty. The evening carried the smell of firewood and rain that hadn't fallen yet. When Chidi arrived, she found her already sitting there, waiting, almost as if she had known he would come. For a while, neither of them spoke, because sometimes silence carries more than words. Ada looked at him, memorizing everything. The line of his jaw, the way one eyebrow lifted when he was nervous, the sound of his breathing, the small things people ignore until they are gone. "You will forget me," she said. Chidi smiled. "Impossible." She looked down. People change when money enters their pocket. He shook his head. "Not me." For a moment, she wanted to believe him fully, but fear finds a way into every steady heart, especially when love is about to be tested by distance. "What if the family turns you into a machine that only sends money?" she asked quietly.
Chidi laughed, not because it was funny, but because it sounded impossible. Turn on him? These were the people who raised him, the people who sold their tools for him, the people who prayed over his journey. Never. Without thinking, he reached for her hand. "The first thing I do when I return is marry you." Ada went still. The sounds around them seemed to pause. The wind kept moving, the trees kept swaying, but neither of them noticed because suddenly the future felt near enough to hold. She lowered her eyes, a shy smile escaping. "You sound very sure." "I am." "What if I refuse?" "Then I will ask again." She laughed. "And if I refuse twice?" "Then I will build a house in front of your shop and wait." Now she laughed properly, the kind of laugh people remember for years. But behind the laughter sat hope, fragile, beautiful hope. The belief that life was finally about to turn. Neither of them knew that the years ahead would break every easy promise. Neither of them knew that loyalty would soon become worth more than any amount of money. The morning came too fast. One moment there was still time. The next, people were already crowding the compound. Neighbors, relatives, faces he barely knew. In places like theirs, a journey abroad was never private. It belonged to everyone. People spoke as if Chidi had already returned rich. His cousin, who arranged everything, a man named Emeka, stood close, smiling widely, resting a heavy arm across Chidi's shoulders, telling everyone he would take care of the boy over there like a brother. Only his grandmother watched Emeka smile without returning it. As the taxi prepared to leave, his mother broke down. She held Chidi tightly, the way mothers hold when they fear the world is about to take something. "Eat well," she whispered. "Don't let them walk you like an animal." Chidi smiled. "Mama, I will be fine." But her tears kept falling because mothers often know things reason cannot explain. The taxi coughed to life. People waved, children chased the car, dust rose in the morning light, and slowly the compound shrank behind him. Chidi watched through the glass until the people became shapes, until the shapes dissolved into nothing. That was the last time he would see them for 4 years. The first weeks abroad felt like a strange dream. Everything was different. The cold that bit through his clothes, the grey buildings, the way people walked fast and looked at no one. Emeka met him at the station, all smiles, and took him to a cramped flat where 6 men already slept in shifts. "This is temporary," Emeka promised. "Trust me." And Chidi, remembering his family's respect for the man, did. In the beginning, excitement carried him. Every hard day felt like a step toward changing his family's story. But excitement runs out. Reality does not. By the second month, the picture had cracked. The job Emeka arranged paid far less than promised, and Emeka took a cut of it for expenses, he said, for the connection. The rent Emeka collected was double what the others paid. When Chidi asked questions, Emeka's smile thinned. "You want to embarrass me after everything I did? Do you know how many people begged me for this chance?" So Chidi swallowed his questions and worked. The long shifts, the aching back, the cold that never fully left his fingers. There were days when he left before sunrise and returned long after dark. Days when his hands were so stiff he could barely hold a spoon. Days when he sat on the edge of a borrowed mattress, staring at a cracked wall, too tired to remove his boots. Nobody back home had prepared him for this part. They had prepared him for arrival, for wealth, for the photographs. Nobody spoke about the loneliness that sat on his chest at night, or the hunger he hid so he could send a little more home. Yet, every morning he rose and did it again, because failure was not an option. Not after the tools his father sold, not after the coin his grandmother pressed in his hand, not after the trust wrapped in cloth and tied with thread. One evening, after nearly 13 hours on his feet, his phone rang. "Mama." The sound alone made him smile. "Mama?" "My son." Her voice carried warmth, home, everything he missed. They talked. She asked about the cold, asked if he was eating, asked if he was resting, and for a moment, comfort returned. Then the conversation shifted, gently, like a stream finding a lower path. "Emeka told us you are doing very well over there. He said the job pays big. Your sisters need new fees. Can you send something?" Chidi's chest tightened. Emeka had lied to them, made his suffering sound like success so that any hesitation would look like greed. He looked at the unpaid bills on the floor. "Yes, Mama," he said, because what else could he say? That the cousin they trusted was quietly bleeding him? That he barely kept himself alive? They would not believe it, not against Emeka's smooth tongue. So he sent what he could, and Emeka, who handled the transfers for the newcomers, took his cut of that too. Over the months, the requests grew. Every call carried a need. Fees, medicine, repairs, a wedding, a burial, always something. And slowly, the questions changed. Nobody asked if he slept. Nobody asked if he was safe. Nobody asked if he was still the same gentle boy that left. The question became something else, something simpler. How much can you send? At first, Chidi ignored the change, but he could not stop noticing it, the way a small crack in a wall grows wider each time you look. But one freezing night, sitting alone outside the flat, his hands shaking from cold and exhaustion, a frightening thought entered his mind. What if the people at home only knew the version of him that Emeka sold them? It hurt, because deep down, he already knew the answer. And very soon, life would give him proof. The proof came on an ordinary Thursday. Not through a fight, not through a betrayal anyone could see. Sometimes, the sharpest truths arrive quietly. Emeka called, and his voice was different, tight, hurried. "There is a bigger job," he said. "Better pay, but they want a deposit for the papers. 2,000. Give me your savings. I will handle everything, like always." Chidi felt the old coin in his pocket, the one he had carried every day. He remembered his grandmother. 2 sides, but only one edge. For the first time, he did not simply obey. "I want to meet the employer myself," Chidi said. Silence. Then Emeka laughed, but it was not a warm laugh. "You don't trust me now, after everything? Fine. Come tomorrow night to the address I send. Come alone."
Something in Chidi's chest went cold. Come alone. He thought of his grandmother again. Not everyone who smiles at your journey wants you to arrive. That night, he did not sleep. He asked one of his flatmates, an older man named Sunday, who had lived in the city for years, about Emeka. Sunday's face darkened. That address, he said slowly, is not an office. 3 boys came through Emeka before you. They gave him their savings for papers that never existed. One of them was never seen again. Chidi's blood ran cold. The bigger job was not a job. It was a trap, and he had almost walked into it holding his own money. But he did not run to the police blindly, and he did not confront Emeka in anger. He remembered his grandmother's patience, the traits that had always been his. He made a plan. The next night, Chidi went to the address, but not alone. Sunday and 2 other men from the community waited across the street, watching, phones recording. Chidi carried an envelope, but inside was only cut paper, not money. When Emeka arrived with 2 strangers, expecting a frightened boy and a pocket full of savings, he instead found witnesses, cameras, and questions he could not answer. The strangers vanished into the dark the moment they smelled trouble. Emeka's smile finally broke. That recording and Sunday's testimony brought the older man's whole scheme into the open. It turned out Emeka had been robbing newcomers for years, and the community abroad had long suspected, but never had proof. Now they did. Chidi survived not because he was lucky, but because he had listened, because he had questioned, because an old woman's coin had taught him to look for the second side of a smile. But surviving the trap did not fix his life at home. The money he had sent through Emeka, they now learned had partly been stolen along the way. To his family, the arithmetic was simple and cruel. They had sent a fortune, little had come back, and whatever Emeka whispered from a distance, they believed. 4 years later, Chidi stepped down from a bus at the edge of his town. The afternoon heat pressed. The air smelled of home, of dust and roasted corn. Everything looked the same, yet everything felt different. A small bag hung from his shoulder. His shirt was faded. His shoes were cracked at the sole. Nothing about him looked like the rich man Emeka's stories had promised. For a moment, he simply stood, breathing in the town, 4 long years behind him. The walk to the compound felt endless. When he pushed the screaming gate, the sound cut through the yard. His mother was frying akara. His sisters were washing clothes. Nobody looked up. Then he spoke. "Mama?" She froze. The spoon went still. Slowly she turned, and for one breath, joy flashed across her face. Then it drowned, in confusion, then in shame, then in anger, because standing there was not the wealthy son Emeka had described. His uncle stepped out, then his father. The old man's eyes moved from the cracked shoes to the thin bag, searching for something that was not there. Nobody hugged him, nobody welcomed him. The silence said everything. And then his uncle asked the question that would burn for weeks. "Where is the money, Chidi?" News moves fast in small towns, faster than truth. By the second day, everyone had a version. The boy who went abroad and squandered a family fortune, the boy who ate their money in a foreign land, the boy who came back with nothing but excuses. That story reached Ada at her father's shop. The first time she heard it, she refused to believe it. Chidi was back and no one had told her. For a long moment, she simply stood, unable to move, because for 4 years she had imagined his return, the reunion, the future they had promised, but never like this. 3 days later, the first humiliation arrived. It happened at breakfast. His mother had fried the akara golden. Chidi reached to take one. Her hand shot out and covered the plate. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I want to eat." She laughed, bitter and tired. "Eat? With what contribution?" The years of shame poured out. "Look at your mates, building houses, buying cars for their parents, and you ate a family's fortune and returned with cracked shoes." The kitchen went silent. Nobody defended him. She took the plate and walked away, leaving Chidi standing there, hungry and hollow. The next humiliation came from his father, and it cut deepest. One evening, the old man called him outside. The sky was bleeding orange. For a moment, Chidi hoped they would finally talk, that his father would ask for the truth. Instead, the old man stared into the distance. "You disappointed me," he said. Simple words, but they carried years. "I sold my tools," his voice cracked. "My hands have nothing to work with now. I told the whole family you would lift us. I stood before every uncle and swore it, and you brought us shame instead." The words landed like stones, one after the other. "I trusted you," he said. "I told everybody you would change this house." He finally looked at his son, and the disappointment in his eyes hurt more than any anger could. Chidi opened his mouth. "Papa, there is something you don't know." The old man raised a tired hand, stopping him. "I don't want stories," he said quietly. "I want the money." And there was no money to give. Not yet. Not in a way anyone would believe. Because sometimes the only thing left is silence and a truth that has not finished arriving. As the weeks passed, disrespect became the air of the house. His sisters avoided him. His mother compared him to every successful man in town. Even neighbors who once celebrated his journey now looked away. Every night, Chidi sat alone in the yard, the old coin turning between his fingers, wondering if 4 years of survival had meant anything at all. But one person had not yet decided. Ada, the woman who had waited 4 years. Soon, she came. The road to the compound felt longer than she remembered, not because it had changed, but because she knew this visit would change everything. She found him by the well, pulling up water. For a moment, she barely knew him, not because his face had changed, but because life had pressed something heavy onto his shoulders. Yet, it was still Chidi. Their eyes met, neither spoke. Then she walked to him and held him tightly. For the first time since coming home, someone looked at him without disappointment. When they stepped apart, she studied his face. "You are really back," he smiled faintly. "I am." "What happened?" she asked. He looked away. Then slowly he told her everything. Not the story the town believed, but the truth. Emeka, the stolen wages, the fake papers, the trap he had escaped by a hair, the coin, the recording, the boy who was never seen again. She listened without breathing. When he finished, she whispered, "You survived all that alone?" He smiled sadly. "Not alone. My grandmother's coin was with me." In that moment, she understood. This was not a man who had wasted a fortune. This was a man who had outsmarted a thief who fed on desperate boys. That evening, the pressure began on her. Her friends mocked her. "You still go to see him," her mother warned. "You are still young. A wealthy suitor awaits." And it was true. A man with a car and money had been asking for her. A man her family had already welcomed into their home. A man who was about to complicate everything. For the first time, Ada sat alone at night, questioning everything. Not because she wanted to leave Chidi, but because everyone around her insisted that she should. Still, she did not argue with them. She did not raise her voice against the whole town. She simply stayed, quietly, the way water stays in a well after rain. Meanwhile, far away, Chidi's escape had set something in motion. The recording had reached the community's leaders abroad, and then the authorities. Emeka's years of fraud collapsed at once. And here was the part no one at home knew. The stolen money from Chidi and from all the boys Emeka had robbed was traced, recovered, and ordered returned to the victims. Chidi was owed the most because he had gathered the proof that freed the others. But Chidi told no one at home. He did not shout his innocence. He remembered his grandmother. Patience. So, when the disrespect grew unbearable, he quietly left the compound, no explanation. His family assumed he had crept back to the city in disgrace. His uncle shook his head. "Let him go and hide." His mother sighed. "I only pray he brings no more shame." His sister said nothing. Life went on. Until 1 week later, a black SUV rolled slowly into the town. Children ran after it. Neighbors stepped out. Curious eyes followed it until it stopped in front of the compound. The door opened, and Chidi stepped out, in a clean shirt, pressed trousers, and beside him, his grandmother, smiling. The family froze. Chidi sat with them and set a folder on the table. He spoke gently. "The money never disappeared. A man you all trusted took it. I got it back and I brought proof." Inside the folder were the records, the recovered funds, and the story of Emeka laid bare. His father read, and his hands began to shake. His mother covered her mouth. "My son," his father whispered, "I was wrong. Forgive me." His mother wept. "I should have believed you." Chidi embraced them. "It is finished." His grandmother only smiled, turning her old coin in her fingers, the coin that had taught a patient boy to find the second side of a smile. Now, they all remembered things they had ignored. The way she had refused to smile back at Emeka on the morning of the journey, the warning she gave that no one wanted to hear. Not everyone who smiles at your journey wants you to arrive. Emeka had smiled the widest of all. He had draped his arm across Chidi's shoulders and called him brother. And he had been the thief the whole time, hidden in plain sight, trusted precisely because he was family. The money the town accused Chidi of eating had been eaten by the very man who arranged his journey. Then he reached into the SUV and brought out an envelope, and inside was a document, land near the market, and the tools his father had sold, bought back and waiting. News spread through the town within minutes. At the shop, Ada heard, dropped everything and ran. When she reached him, they held each other without a word. Then, before everyone, Chidi went down on one knee. Ada, you believed me when the whole town called me a thief. Will you spend your life with me? With tears in her eyes, she smiled. Yes. The compound erupted. 3 months later, they married, surrounded by family, friends, and the same people who once doubted him.
Because in the end, the ones who deserve a place in your future are the ones who never mistook a quiet man for a foolish one, and who stayed while the truth was still finding its way home.